What's up, guys? Thanks for dropping by the channel. If you've been following me on Instagram or YouTube, you probably realized that I was on vacation in Germany and just returned recently, and I had these two watches with me. And during that time, I got to tour around the country, visit some family, and also check out the iconic watch museum in Glashütte. And I'll actually throw a link to a video tour of that watch museum in the description of this video. But for right now, we're doing a head-to-head duel against what I consider probably two of the best everyday German watches you can get from reputable brands. On the left here is the Damasko DS30, and the competitor on the right here is the Sinn 556A. Now I'm going to evaluate these watches on the criteria you see in front of you, and these are based on a 10-point scale. And I want to preface this duel by saying I can easily recommend both watches to anybody, and I think they're phenomenal. And some of the critiques I will mention do stem from how well they held up during my vacation in Germany. So let's get started, and kicking things off, we're going to take a look at the movements for these timepieces, and they're both going to get solid 9s out of 10. And that's because they essentially house the same movement. They both have a Swiss ETA 2824-2, which has about a 40-hour power reserve, beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. You can manually wind this movement, and you can hack it as well. So it's a workhorse Swiss movement. It's used in a lot of different watch manufacturers. And on top of that, I'm very confident that both Damasko and Sinn regulate these movements because the accuracy has been phenomenal during my time in Germany. On wrist, they're only picking up about plus 1 second a day, which is outstanding. So they both get 9s out of 10. Okay, next, let's discuss the case/design of these watches. In this instance, I gotta give the edge to the Damasko. But before I discuss why, I'll just start off by saying that the dimensions of these watches are very similar. The Damasko comes in at 39 millimeters in diameter. The Sinn is just shy of that. It's 38.5 millimeters. Lug to lug is very similar, about 47 millimeters, but where the Damasko edges it is in case thickness. The Damasko is just under 10 millimeters thick, while the Sinn is just under 12 millimeters. On top of that, with the Damasko, they use a surface hardening process that makes the metal nickel-free, and it's basically submarine grade steel, which is extremely corrosion resistant and scratch resistant. And you can see this watch looks practically brand new right off the gate. Now I do want to make you aware that Sinn has a similar hardening process called tegimenting that they actually use in their higher end models. But for this particular timepiece, this Sinn is constructed with a 316L surgical stainless steel, which is fantastic, but it does pick up nicks and scratches a lot easier, as you can kind of see. So that's why the Sinn gets an 8 out of 10, and the Damasko edges it out ever so slightly. Okay, let's talk about the watch band or bracelet. And in this instance, the Sinn actually takes the lead. And honestly, I think that this H-link bracelet that Sinn does is one of the best in the business. I really appreciate that they use double-sided hex screws to secure each link. They're very easy to size, and there's like no play there. Now the clasp itself, while kind of rudimentary, it is very secure, and they even offer a dive extension on this particular model, which it's not a diver, but I guess it's nice to have that extra adjustment. And there is some micro adjust holes as well. Now the minor gripe I do have is that I wish they had half links on this bracelet, which they don't, but overall this is an excellent bracelet, and it pairs really well, and it's integrated really well to the head of the watch. Now, the watch band on the Damasko is no slouch. This is actually a Hirsch Robbie strap. It's very high quality. It's kind of a composite with blue silicone here, and then you have some really nice black weave and contrast blue stitching. Now, why I didn't score as high is one of the issues is kind of similar with the lack of adjustment. I do find that these holes for the strap are pretty far apart, and there could be more of them. The other minor gripe I have is that there's almost no taper to this strap, and especially at the end piece here. If you try and loop this end piece into the buckle, sometimes it's a little difficult, it's a little cumbersome to do, but it gets the job done. I can appreciate that the buckle here is signed D for Damasko, and it's surface hardened to the same grade as the case itself. But overall, the edge does go to the Sinn. Okay, let's move on to durability. And this one, the win goes to the Damasko. It's a 10 out of 10. And honestly, I think some of it is for the reasons I highlighted before. Submarine grade steel on the case and buckle, workhorse ETA movement, similar to the Sinn. And then Damasko does have a lot of patents on their watches for anti-shock protection. There's an anti-shock protection system for their crown, so if you knock it, it doesn't travel into the movement. There's a patented self-lubricating system for the crown as well. So it's very easy to unthread and rethread to ensure it maintains that 200-meter water-resistant rating. And again, this is a 200-meter water-resistant watch that's also anti-magnetic. Very solid case back here, so it's extremely durable. Now that's not to say that the Sinn is a slouch. It's not, other than the fact that it is made with surgical stainless steel, it's very comparable. It does have many of the over-engineered German features that the Damasko has. It's anti-magnetic and shock resistant, although the case back here is a display back, which it does look nice with the custom gold Sinn rotor and thermally blued screws, but that makes it slightly less durable overall, so it doesn't outperform the Damasko in this regard. Let's move on and discuss quality. As you can see, I can't separate the quality of these two watches. They're both phenomenal. They both have, again, that workhorse Swiss ETA movement. They're both extremely legible. Their sapphire crystal has anti-reflective coating applied to the underside and top side of both watches. They both use superluminova. I'm going to throw up a loom shot, a side-by-side loom shot, just so you can see how well they loom up. But both are extremely legible, which I really do appreciate about these timepieces. Okay, if we're going to discuss style, I do think that the Sinn pulls ahead ever so slightly here. If you just look at the colorway and the design of the dial, it's definitely a little more understated and more classic. I think many people would consider this an affordable alternative to a Rolex Explorer or other watches with a similar design with the quarter air brakes on the dial. I think that the date wheel integration is really strong. I mean, granted, the date wheel is very small, but it doesn't affect the symmetry of a dial in any way whatsoever. Now, if you look at the style of a Damasko, it's definitely more sporty and it's its own thing. Damasko tends to have this like big crosshatch pattern that divides the dial into 4 quadrants. It has that orange seconds hand, and the date wheel is a different color than the dial. So it tends to stand out more. It seems to be a little more utilitarian. Now, one thing I can appreciate that the Damasko has over the Sinn is the handset. It's slightly larger, and you can see that the minute hand and second hand extend further to the edges of a dial, so getting a read on time is just ever so slightly easier to read. But again, I think the Sinn is definitely a little more understated and definitely a little more stylish. Okay, moving on to performance. And I couldn't really declare a winner. Both perform at a really high standard, 9s out of 10. On my trip, they withstood like going through airport security. With a Damasko, I climbed a mountain in the Dresden National Park at Basti and the Bohemian Saxony side over the Czech border. And with a Sinn, I was hustling in Berlin and on the streets of Hamburg, and I just felt really confident with the performance of both watches. So both get a 9 out of 10. Okay, moving on to versatility. The Sinn edges out the Damasko in this category with a 9 out of 10. And I do think, and you do have that more classic design and understated style. You can easily dress up this watch if you need to. You can remove the H-link bracelet, which is easy to do with the drilled lugs here. And you can put it on like a more flashy Jubilee bracelet or like a shark mesh bracelet. You could also easily put this on a leather strap, or it even looks good on certain NATOs. So I just think that it's more versatile with any attire that you have. Now, the Damasko itself, it's kind of versatile as a sports watch. You know, it's got a very thin profile, so it can fit under sleeves or cuffs if need be. But I do think that the colorway and the overall design, it's slightly more geared towards a sports or Thule type watch. So I don't think it's as easy to dress up as the Sinn. Okay, let's quickly discuss brand. Now, both of these aren't going to be getting 9s or 10s. Unfortunately, I think most people will be more familiar with the Swiss or Japanese brands that are out there, which is unfortunate because some of the stuff coming out of Germany is phenomenal. But in this category, the Sinn does outrank the Damasko ever so slightly. This watch manufacturer has been around for longer. Their catalog is larger. There's just simply more variations and colorways to each of their models. In addition to that, if we're talking brand equity, I think Sinns retain their value a little bit better than Damasko does. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Now, Damasko has an interesting history. They got their start just purely making cases. And interestingly enough, Damasko in the early 2000s actually made cases and supplied them to Sinn. But again, it's a newer company. They don't have as many watches or colorways out there yet, but they are growing pretty rapidly. In fact, they're starting to modify certain movements and even design their own in-house movements. So if you give Damasko another 5 years, I think it can definitely compete right alongside Sinn, perhaps even surpass them in certain regards. And lastly, I think we need to discuss value. I mean, anytime anyone makes a watch decision, I think the price plays a big factor. Now, both these watches were acquired in North America. I picked up the Damasko DS30 from Long Island Watch. I did talk to Mark, the owner. He did help me out just a little with the pricing, but you can purchase this watch brand new for just over $1,000 US. And that's contrasting to the Sinn. You can purchase this from Watch Buys in North America on Bracelet for just over $13,000 US. Now, that being said, if you opt for the strap option of this watch, the prices are almost comparable between the two. But I think value for money wise, the Damasko definitely takes it. It gets a 10 out of 10. You know, for around $1,000 US, you're getting all the amazing features I discussed with the past criteria here, with the submarine grade steel, high legibility, great accurate ETA movement, and a decent strap to go with it that you can easily swap out. Now again, the Sinn is no slouch in this category either. I do think, you know, it's still an amazing value for money. It easily rivals anything that Swiss brands can throw out anywhere near that price point. It's just a little more pricey than the Damasko. So for that reason, I can't recommend it as highly if you just need to buy one timepiece and you're just purely concerned about value for money. Okay guys, so some of you probably already added up the final scores and it was extremely close. But you know what? At the end of the day, the ever so slight edge does go to the Sinn. I just think that it will retain its value better. It's got that more classic understated design. And honestly, on this bracelet, it just feels bulletproof. I just really, really enjoy it. But again, guys, I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Which one would you choose if you could only pick one of these watches? I'd love to see your feedback in the comments, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.